Were my grandparents Nazis? Are there dirty secrets of that kind in our family?
Das ist meine Urgroßmutter, die habe ich geliebt. Ja, die war so eine liebe, gute Frau.
What answers are millions of Germans discovering right now? Files that had long lain hidden are now easily accessible.
I would call it even a historic change in German memory culture.
We'll show why the Nazi Party membership index can destroy family stories, how guilt is dealt with, and what this laundry has to do with it all. What did my family do during the Nazi era? For Hanno Dannenfeld, there were only vague family stories about it.
Also es gibt so eine Figur in unserer Familie, das ist mein Opa, von dem war bekannt, dass der in der Napola war. Von dem gibt es Fotos in Uniform, wo irgendwie Hakenkreuze drauf sind und so. Das war irgendwie klar, dass der da im System irgendwie drin war. Aber alles drumherum war irgendwie nicht bekannt. Alle diese Leute dann plötzlich in der Kartei zu finden, also schwarz auf weiß, das fand ich dann schon überraschend.
It came without warning from abroad. The U.S. National Archives published Nazi Party membership records online, making 5,000 microfilm rolls accessible to anyone. It's upending the narratives of many families.
Der Vater meines Vaters, ich habe den immer als so einen Gewerkschaftslinken irgendwie wahrgenommen. Der ist jetzt eben auch in der NSDAP-Datei aufgetaucht und das hat wiederum mein Vater dann rausgefunden und hat mich irgendwie sauer angerufen und hat irgendwie gesagt, dass er ist nachträglich so sauer auf seinen Vater, weil die einem immer erzählt haben, sie hätten eine weiße Weste gehabt.
So this was the point where we said, if there's such a great interest in researching your family's Nazi past, we should help people to do so by making this card index searchable.
The German weekly newspaper Die Zeit was the first to organize and simplify these 16 million files for a search engine. Now every reader can search for any name, making history personal.
What I found interesting is that I talked to a lot of people who deal with history professionally, and they said, oh, but I never researched my family past in the archives, and now I did.
The response was enormous. Millions of hits overloaded servers at both the National Archives and Die Zeit. Aleida Assmann says this access is an important, long overdue step for the work of remembrance.
So the change was now that it hit the whole society as a collective and not just individuals.
Writers Günter Grass and Christa Wolf, publisher Siegfried Unseld, former German Foreign Minister Hans-Dietrich Genscher, all were publicly criticized for having been members of Nazi organizations.
That caused a huge upheaval and a lot of discussion that even these amazing figures who supported our democracy had actually their roots in Nazi Germany. But every time it was just one name that was in the discussion.
Names from an index that almost didn't survive. In the last weeks of the war, Nazi leadership ordered the destruction of these incriminating materials. But the person tasked with that hid the documents under waste paper, where they were secured by US troops on their advance through Nazi Germany. They were handed over to the German Federal Archives after German unification, but accessing them was complicated, involving applications and waiting periods. But the US National Archives kept digital copies, and in spring of 2026, everything was suddenly accessible. Statutes of limitations had expired, and most of that generation has died. The truth has come out, but is it too late?
Super schade, dass diese ganzen Dinge jetzt erst rauskommen. Ich ärgere mich dann über all die Gespräche, die man jetzt so hatte, die mal so ein bisschen das Thema so leicht berührt haben, aber man hat auch nichts, woran man sich festhalten kann. Nicht so schwarz auf weiß, wie es mit diesen Ausweisen jetzt plötzlich da ist. Ne? Für uns ist es jetzt auch interessant, weil es irgendwie wir mit unseren Eltern irgendwie anders nochmal reden müssen oder können. Ne? Also diese Fragen, warum? Habt ihr da nicht doller nachgefragt? Ich meine, es handelt sich irgendwie um das eines der größten Menschheitsverbrechen und ihr wisst, dass eure Eltern da irgendwie mit drin waren. Warum habt ihr da nicht doller nachgefragt?
Gaps have opened between reality and memories, involving narratives, reassurances, omissions, and repression. A survey conducted by DIE ZEIT revealed those gaps.
More than a quarter says my parents opposed the regime. And only very, very few people, only about 3% say my grandfather or my grandmother, they were supporting the NSDAP. So this obviously can't be true.
The reality was just the opposite. Only 1% of the population actively resisted the regime. The Nazi Party had some 10 million members, meaning 1 in 5 adults was a member, and now they're showing up in the files.
I think there's a huge difference whether there is historical evidence to this kind of talk or whether it is something that was established in the families and always repeated.
What the membership cards can't reveal is why someone joined the Nazi Party. The date of membership can give some insight. The Nazi Party was founded in 1920 during the Weimar Republic. Its most prominent member was Adolf Hitler. Within 13 years, it went from an insignificant splinter party to a totalitarian ruling party. The Nazis took power in 1933 and began shaping Germany into a fascist state.
We can see if someone entered the party before 1933 that this person was convinced of the ideology.
It was an ideology that propagated radical nationalism and anti-Semitism. Young people were especially drawn in by the Nazis' promise of renewal. Some 40% of the members were under 30 years of age.
This party had a very huge promise for the young generation because it was not a totally fixed system, and it gave a lot of agency, really also political agency, to this youth because they were immediately drawn into the system to organize and to create the state anew.
There was a huge surge in people wanting to join a few weeks after the Nazis took power. So many, in fact, that a membership cap was imposed from 1933 to 1937.
Mein Uropa zum Beispiel, der war einer der ersten 1933, der da irgendwie mit dabei war. Und dann wieder andere, die halt erst irgendwie 43, 42 in die Partei eingetreten sind. Und man hat ja leider heute irgendwie dann nur die Möglichkeit zu spekulieren, ja, und zu sagen irgendwie, keine Ahnung, vielleicht gab es irgendwie so einen Gruppenzwang oder wie im Fall von meinem anderen Urgroßvater, der war halt irgendwie so ein Viehhändler, eher so ein Großgrundbesitzer und der hatte vielleicht andere Gründe, ja, also geschäftliche Gründe, in die Partei einzutreten.
Whether the motivation was opportunism, careerism, or anti-Semitism, no one was forced to join the party. Nor was anyone added without their knowledge, as was often claimed later on.
Nobody had to become a member of the NSDAP. It was a personal, individual decision to become a member of this party, and it was a decision to support the regime.
It was a regime that plunged the world into war and mercilessly persecuted and murdered 6 million Jews, as well as many others whom the Nazis deemed undesirable. After 13 years of the Nazi regime and a lost war, came the capitulation in 1945.
Die Nazi-Regierung und die deutsche Wehrmacht haben bedingungslos den Alliierten Expeditionsstreitkräften kapituliert.
Germany lay in ruins, occupied by troops from the US, the UK, France, and the Soviet Union. These allies pursued two goals: holding the perpetrators accountable while also building a new state, a new Germany. How could those two goals be reconciled? Hitler had killed himself to avoid facing justice, but many of the other main war criminals were put on trial by the Allies at Nuremberg. That clearly identified the guilty parties, but were they the only culprits?
These were people who were brought to court, and rightly so, but all the others were fine. You know, always this idea that, okay, these are now the perpetrators, okay, we can count them into that group, but that also leaves the rest of the society untainted.
That changed when they too were forced to answer for their actions under the Nazis. Now doctors, industrialists, and civil servants were also being brought to trial.
And then people said, okay, but now kind of everybody is sitting in court. This can't be right. These are honorable persons. Yeah. And people started to oppose these kind of processes. This is very important to see that most Germans, they regarded themselves as victims of the National Socialism, not as the ones who did this.
In Hanno's family, too, there is the impulse to relativize it all to this day.
Ich habe gemerkt, dass die Ergebnisse, auf die man dann so stößt, und wenn man da jetzt Leute damit dann konkret konfrontiert, dass relativ schnell dann einfach so eine Rechtfertigungsrhetorik hochkommt. Dass im Falle meines Opas eben, der war halt noch so jung, der war halt irgendwie in der Napola, er ist da von seinem Vater reingesteckt worden und hinterher war er aber irgendwie ein guter Ehemann, ein guter Vater, guter Großvater. Und sobald es die eigene Familie betrifft, die Bereitschaft, da irgendwie doller nachzubohren, doch irgendwie nicht so richtig groß ist.
And with that, we come to the white laundry. As part of denazification, people could get a certificate attesting to their unproblematic political background from credible individuals. This is mockingly referred to as a Purcell certificate. After all, Purcell gets clothes especially white.
This is interesting because it also has very deep moral implications, because whiteness is the color of purity and immaculateness and, of course, also innocence. So to fetishize the color of white means that especially at the time when all of this was hidden, was not talked about, was silenced, at the same time there was this concept of persil, something that you could wash away your guilt.
This strategy by the Americans enabled the Germans' desire to repress the truth. Increasingly more important than coming to terms with the past was looking ahead and rebuilding Germany into a functioning country. The US preferred to keep the Nazi Party membership records in their possession.
They wanted to make a clear break and start from scratch. Create a new beginning, and because the Nazi society had to be transformed into a democratic society, but with the same people, how can you do this? So one of their laws was to create the new beginning via forgetting. Don't talk about it anymore.
Konrad Adenauer, the first chancellor of the new Federal Republic, took a pragmatic approach. If everyone who'd been involved in the Nazi regime were dismissed, there would be no one left to found the new state.
I think Konrad Adenauer, he put it in the way that you can't spill dirty water when you don't have clean one. So they have to work with these people, and they wanted to integrate these people into the German society.
There are so many forms of denial, not listening to it, not taking it into. In all of this, these are forms in which you keep it away from yourself, and to the huge move to embrace it as part of your history, and to that was only done by the next generation.
More than 20 years later came the 1968 student revolts. They questioned everything up to that point and demanded a real reckoning with the entire previous generation.
The now almost adult children were talking to their parents, but in a way that there was a confrontation that would not release stories. It was not a moment of transition, of telling anything.
A now iconic moment was when activist Beate Klaasfeld slapped then-Chancellor Kurt Georg Kiesinger at a party conference. It was meant to protest his Nazi past.
Another milestone of this process was surely the TV series Holocaust from the late 70s, an American series, which stirred a lot of conversation about the guilt of every German when it comes to the Holocaust. Because people never thought about the Holocaust as the central crime that the whole society was kind of involved in, because everybody saw that Jews were deported. And so these were steps in a long and slow process.
Technology has now provided another piece of the puzzle by granting open access to the Nazi Party archives. The cards are on the table. Now anyone who wants to look can see.
I think it's very important to know that society, democracy is endangered, that it's everyone, every single person is part of this.
Germany is now regarded as the world champion of coming to terms with the past and confronting its guilt. There are 100,000 Stolpersteine on the streets commemorating deported people, the Holocaust Memorial in the heart of Berlin, and in-depth lessons in schools. On the other hand, right-wing extremism is also on the rise here, and the right-wing populist party AfD is gaining influence.
Die AfD macht irgendwie, hat vielleicht die Mehrheit im nächsten Landtag in Sachsen-Anhalt und kann dann, was weiß ich, Richterposten nach ihrem Gusto besetzen. Und wie viele Leute dann vielleicht denken, ich trete in die AfD ein, damit ich Karriere hier im Landesjustizministerium machen kann, weiß ich nicht. Und zu merken, dass die eigene Familie da irgendwie nicht besonders stark war, lässt einen schon drüber nachdenken, wie groß die Gefahr für heute ist.
How about you? Are there any dark secrets in your family history? Let us know in the comments.